Tonight is the last installment of our April Assembly, Smiling Happy Tears, All About Love workshop series. Tonight our focus is Thriving Queer Spaces for Joy, featuring two amazing guest speakers, Lambert Rahming and Daunasia Yancey. Lambert Rahming is a multifaceted leader with a proven track record, of cultivating communities of positivity and integrity, skilled in content creation, social media management, event planning, web design, public speaking, and program development. Well-rounded professional with a Bachelor of Arts focused in music composition from Morehouse College, a Master of Divinity from Boston University, TIPS certified in bartending, and ordained in the AME Church. Daunasia Yancey is a community relations specialist for the Mayor's Office of LGBTQ Advancement, which works to empower, protect, and advance the rights and dignity of all LGBTQ residents. She is a freedom fighter working towards the liberation of all oppressed peoples and the creation of a more just world. Daunasia has served as a leader in the LGBTQ community since she was young, having started the first GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, in a public middle school in Massachusetts in 2004. She went on to work at the Boston Alliance of LGBTQ Youth, Bagley, BAGLY, Boston GLBTQ Social Services, GLASS, Fenway Health, and other community institutions. Yancey responded to the call to action of the movement for Black Lives and founded the Boston Black Lives Matter chapter in 2014. She organized mass mobilizations and direct actions and advocated for resource and policies to support Boston's Black communities. So, without further ado, Daunasia will pass the mic to you to speak first, followed by Lambert, and then we'll get into some Q&A later on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gio. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Paige. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to see Lamb. I do have a presentation, so let me share my screen and we can get into it. Let me get into slideshow mode. We good?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So like I said, my name is Daunasia Yancey. I use she, her, and hers for my pronouns. And I started working in January at the City of Boston in our LGBTQ advancement office, which is a new office. And I'm going to tell you all about it. Okay, so our office is led by Quincy Roberts Sr. He's our executive director. Julianne Doherty Lee is our chief of staff. One of the other community relations specialists is Candace Swen, who I've actually known Quincy and Candace since I was a teenager. And it's been like a really incredible journey to kind of have this full circle moment, being a young queer person from Boston and now having this office. It's a dream come true. And I'm also our other community relations specialist. We have John Penuela, who is our policy fellow. And then we also have hired 2 youth fellows, as well as several youth filmmakers from Boston Arts Academy that we've hired as well. You'll see some of their work a little bit later in my presentation as well. So here are our values and mission. You kind of heard a little bit of our mission earlier. To empower, protect, and promote the rights, dignity, and advancement of LGBTQ residents here in Boston, where we develop policies, community-oriented programming, and provide resources for the city's LGBTQ community. And our values are these 3, doing big things by getting the small things right, really focusing on the day-to-day, the little pieces, and you'll hear a little bit more later about how I break down our work in the context of building queer spaces of joy. Getting City Hall out of City Hall and into our neighborhoods. Again, we're community relations specialists, and our job is really to be in relationship and making sure that people are able to access all of the things that City Hall has for us as constituents. And then embracing the possibility of a Boston for all. That's just a big piece of this administration, is really just expanding what it means to be a resident here and who's invited, right? Who's at the table, who's making the table, who's bringing the chairs, who's throwing the chairs, all of that. So basically trying to, keep everyone in the loop. And then we also have our 3 pillars, which are policy, programs, and resources. We're charged here at the office, and I think we talk about this in terms of City Hall as a whole, as being public servants to serve all constituents equitably, intentionally, and joyfully, creating that Boston for everyone. Our director talks a lot about Boston being the queerest city in America, and how do we make that true? And how do we make this the safest, best place for people to be their full selves? Having the foundational knowledge, you'll hear a little bit more later again about some of the work that we're doing inside City Hall to make sure that people are competent in LGBTQ issues and concerns, and really being accessible. And then also providing tangible best practices. It's one thing to talk about, the things that we care about or the communities we want to serve. It's another thing to really come up with those, again, policies and practices. And then to display the possibilities of government. How can we think outside the box? How can we, we are all here in this country and in these institutions as they exist. And how do we, again, make space for ourselves and each other and change the way that government works so it works for everybody? So thinking really about this question here tonight, what does it look like in terms of the mayor's office of LGBTQ plus advancement, creating spaces of queer joy? And when I was thinking about this, I really came to these 4 pieces: affirmation, protection, celebration, and investment. And I'll explain kind of how I kind of see our work in these pockets, but really, I think that a lot of times, folks only focus on 1 or maybe 2 of these, and things get lost. So for example, affirmation, like affirming the fact that queer people exist, we deserve to exist, we are wonderful and excellent, and are part of all of the things, have created the whole world together with everyone, and those kind of like realities, right? But we can't just stop there. We can't just say that. We also have to provide protection. We also have to actually put policies, procedures, action in place to actually protect people, to make sure that when someone is walking into a place like City Hall, that even though the building itself may be overwhelming, that the people inside are really welcoming and truly genuinely understand them. And then celebration, of course, celebration, partying, pride, all of those things we of course want to do. And they go in hand with all of these other pieces. And then investment as well. Actually putting, the city's money where its mouth is. If we're supporting these communities, how are we putting resources there, whether that is actual funds, if that is connection to resources, if that is building space, renting space, whatever it is, how do we support people through those processes? So I will keep going. So in terms of affirmation, the creation of this office as itself, of course, is a historic thing. There has not been this office before. There's always been kind of a liaison position that has often been a person who's worked multiple jobs. Our director has been the liaison. Our chief of staff, Julianne, has also been the LGBTQ liaison for the city. But now there's this actual office that was founded last March, and Director Roberts was named the director in June. And so, as I said earlier, our goals are to create a city hall for everyone and create a Boston for everyone. So part of that is our LGBTQ plus competency training that we actually just launched last week. And essentially we are training City Hall employees in how to be competent. You can't have a joyful environment if people around you don't understand and respect you. And so we have trained, we started with the kind of most forward-facing departments, that being like HR, 311, and ONS. Of course, HR interacts with every single employee. 311 is a very forward-facing department of the city. And then ONS is the Office of Neighborhood Services. So those are the people who really are out in neighborhoods every day supporting the community. And so those are the people that we wanted to start with. And I'm happy to say that it went wonderfully. We do have a beautiful video. I wasn't able to get it for tonight, but hopefully once we do have that public, I will definitely share that out. That kind of shows a little bit of our training and how it went. But that is something that we are going to roll out to 18,000 plus employees of the city of Boston. And so kind of thinking about how we roll that out, and really it being a space of learning, that coming knowing we all have room to grow, we all have room to learn, and starting with, this is our duty, right? As city employees, this isn't additional, this isn't, you know, extra, this is part of your general basic competency. And we've had a lot of support with that with the administration as well. And it is completely volunteer at this point. So these are departments that have actually signed up, and there are several more departments that are lined up waiting to get this training. We also have had our gender data focus groups and survey, collaborating with the digital team at the city, as well as the federal United States digital response team. And that piece is talking about how we collect gender data as the city. So for example, when you fill out a form and it asks your gender or sex data, we want to know, why are we doing that? When are we asking that? When is it appropriate? When is it necessary? How does the community feel? So we've held focus groups. We also have a survey that's actually live right now. We haven't shared the survey itself kind of fully forward facing because of some of the things that were talked about earlier in terms of security and just making sure we're getting to the people that we need to. But if anyone wants to participate, please let me know. I'll be happy to send that over. And then, of course, language access is something that we hold forefront. We have the language access team at the city, and we take full advantage of making sure that our items are translated, or we have the opportunity to have translation in our events. And so again, this is the piece, this for me was affirmation, right? Just the fact that we exist, we deserve to exist, and should be able to exist in all of these spaces safely and comfortably. Then protection. So we also have our gender inclusivity ordinance. So MOLA has been developing policies and programming and providing resources. The gender inclusivity ordinance specifically was passed by the city council and basically demanded that the city come up with a comprehensive playbook based on findings from the community around the gender and sex data collection that I had just talked about, prioritizing a list of improvements and technical solutions in terms of our marriage licenses. For example, the marriage licenses, it doesn't need to ask anybody their gender. Your gender is not relevant to your marriage in Massachusetts. And in Boston. And so why are we asking that question? So we have come up with recommendations for these language changes and then given them to the state. We've done what we can do kind of in the city of Boston in terms of adding a third gender marker, but we've actually run into, of course, the government has many layers. And so we're actually working with the United States digital response team to figure out on the federal level and then the state as well, how we change the language on the marriage licenses. But these are all things that are kind of in process. We also have public safety briefings with the Boston Police Department. Those often include the BRIC team that folks might know about. They often include the FBI, and they basically give updates on what threat levels are in Boston. They give updates on what hate crimes have happened and things like that, and people are able to hear that. And explicitly in our department, we do understand and bring to the table with the LGBTQ liaison for the Boston Police Department that our community has not historically been felt protected by police across the board. And so bringing that and being forefront with that, and then kind of trying to meet us there as opposed to just kind of putting on a happy face and pretending like we just all get along. Really, we've been able to be really frank and have really good conversations about like, okay, what does it mean to have police at Pride? Where do the police need to be? Where, legally required versus not? And how do we work with communities, with groups and organizations that are pulling together their own security teams, that are pulling together bike marshals and things like that? How do we, get the Boston Police Department to respect those community efforts? So yes, that is kind of the protection piece in my assessment. Then celebration. Of course, we want to celebrate. When we think about joy, of course, we think about celebration. One thing that I'm really passionate about and that I'm excited to be lead on is our Amplify GSA initiative. And so we're promoting gender and sexuality alliances in Boston Public Schools. You may know them by gay straight alliances, but the language, as we know, evolves constantly. So really learning what LGBTQ students need in order to feel supported in their schools, strengthening, creating, and promoting brave spaces, and contributing to the social and emotional wellness of LGBTQ students is really our goal with this program. It's really to say, you know, we have the law on our side in terms of schools being legally able to have GSAs that are protected, but how do we get, you know, the actual feet on the ground? How do we get that information into schools, to administrations especially, and make sure that students are, you know, well within their right to do what they want to do. So for example, we had our Boston Celtics Pride Night on March 3rd, where we announced the launch of Amplify GSA, and we went to the Celtics Pride Night game. We brought a bunch of youth, GSA advisors, there were Celtics folks, there were NBC folks, the film team that I talked about earlier from Boston Arts Academy was able to be mentored by NBC and Celtics staff throughout the game. So they got to like be on the court and like film the not film the game, but you know, film the players. And it was amazing. I'm clearly still like cavelling over it. But the community partners as well that joined us, we're in an ongoing relationship with. And so being able to connect young people to mentorship, internships, we have now 2 youth fellows that are planning our youth summits. These are just some photos from the Amplify GSA Pride Night. And then here's our video. This is the mayor announcing it.
In Boston, we're committed to protecting and promoting our LGBTQ+ communities and the rights, dignity, and humanity of all our residents. Currently, only a handful of our schools have a Genders and Sexualities Alliance. So we're launching our new program, Amplify GSA.
GSA is for Gay Straight Alliance, or for modern times, Gender and Sexuality Alliance.
It's kind of a safe space where they can express who they are, even with or without their parents knowing.
The kids coming and supporting each other no matter what their gender is.
We went on a tour to build safe spaces in schools. So, how many people know that it is a law protecting the right to have a GSA in schools? We want to be celebrated, not tolerated.
Amplify GSAs! Join us on Sunday, May 21st for our first Amplify GSA Summit. Scan the QR code or visit this link to learn more. In Boston, we're
That video just gives me so much joy. Here are just our flyers for our Amplify GSA Summit, which I am also happy to share. Oh, I think I skipped something. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I see some hearts. Yeah, no, it's incredible. I'll hold this up for a little bit too, just to give some details. Our Amplify GSA Summit is May 21st. We are looking for adult volunteers if people are interested. We do have a few workshop slots still available as well for organizations that want to put on a youth-led or targeted workshop. It's basically going to be a day of workshops, fun, performances, food, and fellowship for students and young people in Boston 22 and under. So you can go to boston.gov/amplify-GSA. If you're interested in learning more, the registration is there, the workshop sign up is there, or feel free to, again, reach out to me personally. We're super excited. It's going to be awesome. It's actually also the day after Massachusetts Youth Pride, which is the 20th, that Saturday, downtown as well. And so we talked about celebration and then investment. So I am thrilled also about this program, our Beyond Pride Community Mini Grants. We were able to provide mini grants up to $10,000 for LGBTQ-led and serving organizations in the community, as well as individuals, which was also a big deal. A lot of times, grant opportunities have these barriers that individuals can access, that, you know, people who may just be doing something, you know, helping a neighbor or helping a group or taking care of young people just because it's what they do, often are not able to access some of the supports that go to kind of nonprofits or more organized groups. And so we were able to also support individuals and really grassroots efforts. So super excited about that. And our biggest investment actually was in BPS GSAs. And we were able to support several that are going to be doing all sorts of awesome pride stuff and swag and a middle school queer prom and amazingness. And then for us, we have at the office, we're gonna have our Pride kickoff on June 1st. That's a Thursday at City Hall Plaza. There'll be a re-unveiling of the Portraits of Pride with additional portraits, performances and all that jazz. And then we also are gonna have our big queer prom on the 2nd. And more information will be coming out about those events as well. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you again for having me. Here's the information to keep in touch with our office. Feel free to chat me if anyone needs anything or wants to find out more information. Yeah, I think this is kind of how I've kind of conceptualized of how we're building these thriving queer spaces at the city through, like I said, the affirmation, protection, celebration, and investment. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was incredible and very informative. Thank you. We are going to pass it to Lamb, and then we will have a Q&A at the end with both of y'all. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you all. I would like to say that this is the second time that I've been on a panel with you, Daunasia, and each time it's just even more joyful. And I also want to say thank you to Ujima for having me. This is an incredible honor. So let me get this screen situation together. Give me 1 second.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So yeah, this is going to be our presentation on building spaces where queer joy thrives. So I'll take us a little bit through a table of contents. I'll give you an overview of our company, our mission, and how exactly we conceptualize cultivating queer joy using something that I call the 3 E's. And then we'll talk about ways in which you can get involved. Before I move forward, I do want to say that again, it seems as though Daunasia, we're on the same wavelength because just as you showed a picture of Candace, here's a picture of Candace on our workshop. This is a picture of her doing a performance during our party when we did a Renaissance party, right when the album came out. And as you can see from the picture, people were very excited. And so we always love to have Candace perform whenever we have the opportunity. So let's jump in and give an overview of the company, Men of Melanin Magic. So we began in 2016, and we began by putting together different bar takeovers. One thing that we realized is that Boston is very much a transient city. People come in and get what they need and leave. But we also realized that there was a large population of queer men of color in the city, but they just didn't know who they were or who each other were. And so we, as a grassroots organization, put folks together in one place. We created centralized locations for people to meet each other, connect, and build lasting friendships that still endure to this day. And so for those next 3 years, that's when the bar takeover started to increase in size, we realized that we had something going for us. We realized that there was something there. And so we leaned in. And so with that, we came up with different programming that we thought would be an extension of the work that we were already doing. And so that led into us doing something called the T, which is a discussion group where folks talk at length about different topics that are very important to the community. And then that's also when we had a little bit of an evolution with the nightlife programming that we were doing. I'm not sure if anybody in this chat remembers, but there was once upon a time a place called Machine, and that was our first start in really doing club type of events. Machine is long since gone, but during that time, we were able to transition to a place called Oberon, which was in Cambridge, and we launched it in January of 2020, before the world flipped upside down. But the beautiful thing about that is we realized the power of a flyer, and we put it out there, and nearly 250 people came to a party in the dead of winter of January. And so that was really cool to see. And one of the lasting feedback was that people didn't feel as though they were in Boston anymore. They felt as though they stepped into a whole nother dimension. And so we wanted to go even further into that. And so we conceptualized something called Men of Color Weekend, which was the first of its kind in P-Town. It's never happened before. And the thing that really gave us the confidence to do it is because we were able to, we had trust. The community, after all those years, saw the work that we were doing. And when we lobbied the invitation to do something completely new and bold and fresh, they signed on. And so we were gearing towards the second year of doing Men of Color Weekend, but of course, the pandemic hit. And so that was really a challenge for us to figure out how we can still offer queer joy, but in a way that had us pivoting and shift along as the world was moving. And so, knowing me, I can't stay still. I have to do something. I was like, well, what about underwear? You got to wear underwear. And so we cultivated a line of underwear called Frolic, and also continued doing the tea, but virtually. It was very important for us to provide an outlet for folks to keep talking. We were in silos in our own spaces, in our own homes, but we still wanted there to be a way for people to connect with each other. And so we entered into 2021, which I label as our bounce back. And because we bounced back really strong, in the sense that so many things came about, where we did the first Pride Party out of the pandemic in Boston at Encore called We Outside. It brought together over 600 people who were cooped up in their homes, but when the restrictions were lowered, they couldn't wait to get out. We also then did Men of Color Weekend again. And then that was the year when we started a really cool night hosted at Legacy nightclub called Bust Down Fridays, which really centers the experiences of queer people of color, and is always a fun time. It's always a blast. We also experimented with something called Bust Down Fitness. Again, this is another way of us creating queer joy in an environment that doesn't really involve, nightlife or substances or anything that might, something that's alternative. Still takes that club vibe, but puts it into a way that advances health, advances the way in which we can connect with each other through our heartbeats. And then also we were able to cultivate our drag brunch that has now become weekly. Started off monthly and now it's weekly. And in 2022, we really found our momentum. We were able to continue a lot of the programming that we did in 2021 and added a lot of different and cool things. Men of Color Weekend evolved into Frolic Weekend, and we were able to do Bust Down Fitness in partnership with our friends in the Fenway area. We were also able to do a really cool initiative out of the city in partnership with City Hall that we called A Very Proud City. It was a month-long series of different Pride celebrations that traveled throughout the city from downtown. We did a queer marketplace at Faneuil Hall. Downtown Crossing, we turned into Dancetown Crossing and featured a lot of different performers. And we also had a mutual aid benefit concert in Boston Common. It was a really fun display of how we could take over the city in a way that is celebratory and also speaks to our dignity as queer people in the city of Boston. And so with all of that coming into this year, 2023, we really see it as what I call our renaissance. And so, oops, hold on, y'all. It got a little ahead of me. There we go. We're almost there. Okay, here we go. So here's 2023. This is our cultural renaissance. These are all the brands that we have that are taking place in their different capacities. It's a lot to handle, but I'm so happy that I have a really strong and capable team. And it's clear that we are on a mission, and our mission is simple. Our mission is to make queer joy easy to find. Like I said in the beginning, in 2016, it was pretty difficult for people to find each other and to make those connections. And so we want to make sure that folks have access to this joy, and once they're there, they can really lean into it. And so when it comes to cultivating joy, I feel strongly about these 3 E's. And the 3 E's are evolve, expand, and establish. And I will go into explaining a little bit more about each of those. So when it comes to evolve, we always want to make sure that when we're evolving something, it's to increase social impact. If it doesn't do that or any of the other E's, it's nothing that we go into. We won't even consider it unless it falls into one of these E's. And so we want to always make sure that we're creating some kind of social impact. So for example, when it came to our drag brunch, it began as something called Brunch Up Your Life. It took place in Dorchester at a very, it was very humble beginnings. And it was monthly, and the concept wasn't really fleshed all the way out. And so we took the time to really figure some things out, and also figure out how we can find more partners to create something and evolve it. And so from Brunch Up Your Life, we were able to transform it into drag teas with a centralized location. The developed concept is that the majority of the cast is composed of trans performers of color. And it's a high capacity venue. And so we have close to 180 folks every Sunday that come through at Game On to enjoy performers and artists really being able to bring their full selves into the space. They feel safe and they feel appreciated. And it's always a beautiful thing to see. Another example of how we were able to evolve, or we just kept on asking this question: if we can do this with drag tees, what about all the other things that we do? And so when it comes to Bust Down Fridays, it's always a fun time, but how can we make it fun, but also with a purpose? And so we looked into booking more talent, but not just more, not quantity, but quality. And so one of those things is we were able to bring Candace from the Real Housewives of Potomac to come through. It was a great time. And then also to make it the party that cares, we've incorporated health initiatives and also mutual aid. And I'll speak about that later in the presentation. Also, when it came to We Outside, the first party that came out of the pandemic at Encore, we were also wondering how can that be transformed. It took place the first weekend of Pride, and was always popular twice in a row. But how could we expand or evolve that? And so we dreamed up something that we call BIPOC Pride. It will be taking place this year from May 29th through June 4th. And it will be a week experience of celebration, a variety of ways for people to enjoy themselves and lean into that queer joy. Another thing is Frolic Men of Color Weekend. We were thinking about how that can be transformed as well. And the good thing is that we have a lot of data, and we were able to analyze it and see, we noticed the popular cities that came from wherever they were to Massachusetts to enjoy themselves in P-Town. And so we figured, well, they've spent all this money to come to us. How about we go to them? And so we have done a series of Frolic Weekend mixers and tea dances in different cities. The first one was New York. We went to Brooklyn and Harlem. And then we went to DC. And then now we have one scheduled for May in Atlanta. So we're consistently thinking about ways in which we can take something to the next level. So that's evolution. And then we get to establish. And the thing that we want to establish is a cultural renaissance for queer life, not queer nightlife, but queer life in general. And one way that we see ourselves doing that is by leveraging the connections that we've already made and leveraging them to the community's advantage. Everything that we do is for the sake of the community and the community's joy. And so the people who we talk to, the partners that we make, the collaborations that we cultivate, it's all for the community's advantage. And so when we've done that is by doing a very proud city, which was a really great way for us to, it really challenged us because it's one thing to just get a grant from the city, but it's another thing to actually do right by the city and deliver. And in so doing, we were able to amass a lot of contacts within City Hall so that for future events, we'd be able to leverage those in order to create more avenues for queer joy. Another thing that we were involved with is something called the Fenway Cohort. It invited a group of startups to come together and learn through mentorship and also the practice of putting on an event at their new location called The Station. We were able to build connections and relationships in a way where today, or they'll be a part of BIPOC Pride, which again will only benefit the community at large. So when we think about establishing a cultural renaissance for queer life, we think about being the ones who set the pace. And we set the pace in a different kind of way. So for us, we don't have values, but what we do have, we have priorities. And for us, that brings together or brings about a sense of urgency. And there are urgencies when we think about these three things. We have urgency about transparency. For us, information breeds confidence and silence breeds fear. And we are in no way, we never desire a community of fear. We want folks to be confident and bold in the way in which they're able to experience queer joy. So transparency is an urgent priority of ours. Also diversity. The more variety, the better the society. And we never want to be stale. We always want to be fresh and up to date. And we want our action to be driven by connection, connection to the community, having our ear to the ground. And that only comes through having an urgency with relevancy. So then we've talked about evolve, we talked about establish, and then that takes us to the third E, which is expand. And we expand, or we see expansion in three different ways. The first one I'll talk about is resources. So earlier I was talking about how Bust Down Fridays, we dreamed of it becoming the party that cares. And in collaboration with the Multicultural AIDS Coalition, we've been able to introduce to the community something that we call quick kits, which are free HIV home test kits that people can use in the safety and comfort of their own homes. It's really important for us to increase these resources and folks' access to the quick kits. And they're not only available at the events that we do, folks can easily go on our website and order one, and a quick kit will be delivered to your house within that same week. So if ever you're in need of a home testing kit, go on our website and you'll have access to that. One thing I always say to my team is that we are in the business of relationships and providing access. And so we've done that with collaboration with two groups in Boston. The Queer Muslims of Boston, we were able to do one of many events to come called Quiche Quiche Party, where the music of South Asia was the highlight, and folks from across that demographic were able to come together in a way that they've never been able to before in Boston. And it was a really awesome display of folks really being able to experience and enjoy their culture. And so we loved being able to provide access to the spaces that we work with to the Queer Muslims of Boston. Additionally, the ballroom community.
I'm sorry. This meeting ends at 7:15. And so if you are able to wrap it up, which you can, so we can leave some room for questions. If you guys are able to stay a little bit longer for folks who have questions, that would be great. I'm really sorry.
Yep, no problem. I will speed on through. So we've also expanded through locations. Like I said, we've expanded to Atlanta and also New York. We expand also through opportunities. It's important for us that we are creating events for queer people of color by queer people of color. And so we've hired folks within the community to be brand managers, interns, ambassadors, and also opened channels for folks to invest in the company. And then lastly, this is an invitation for folks to get involved. You can follow, share, and attend. And our tag is right there at the bottom. And lastly, build it and they will come. So thank you for listening, and we are excited to answer any questions you might have.
Woo, thank y'all so much. This was really incredible. I loved hearing everything y'all had to say. And I want to make sure that our members have some space to ask y'all questions. And so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, not all at once.
Hi, y'all. First of all, thank you, Daunasia and Lamb. Y'all both know I have a lot of respect for you all, so just really, really grateful that y'all were able to make time to come and share your wisdom, your brilliance with our community. Super, just grateful. And I had a question for Lamb, as it relates to just your work, and how you're talking about sort of evolution and expansion, and you mentioned sort of expanding in some of these like core, just like deeply Black queer hubs like Atlanta, Philly, New York. And I'm just curious to know what sort of led the decision to expand to those cities. You know, these places, as you know, already have sort of like, you know, a lot of activities, a lot of parties, a lot of culture, versus like Massachusetts, which, you know, there are Black communities in Massachusetts, you know, because of gentrification. We have like, I think, such opportunity outside the city, Brockton, Randolph, you know, to really, you know, activate Black communities in Massachusetts. And I actually feel like those folks are in desperate need of more like built out like programming. And so just curious to know, just like, is there intention on expanding as it relates to the state? Or do you think of expansion sort of broadly outside the nation?
Hi, James. Yes, that's a fantastic question, and something that I was thinking about before we even went into these cities. And one thing I realized is that you can have the ingredients, but that doesn't mean that you know how to cook. You can have the infrastructure, but that doesn't mean that you know how. That doesn't mean that there are connections there. And one thing I found is that in places like Atlanta and New York, yes, they have the infrastructure of these different or many clubs and many places to go to. But what we found was that there was still a lack of being able to connect. And our mission within other cities that we inhabit is not to compete, but to complete. Because what we do is fill in the gaps. There are a lot of people who are already doing great work there, and our intention is not to step on their toes. We want to actually increase and amplify what they're doing by promoting what they're doing, sharing. But when it comes to us, we want to fill in the gaps of where folks have said to us, hey, we like the things that you all are doing over there. How can that be translated into the context of Atlanta, the context of DC, the context of New York? So thank you for that question. But yeah, just because you have the infrastructure doesn't necessarily mean the connection is there too.
Thank you for that question, James, and that response. Other questions? Daunasia, I had a question for you because I've known you since I was in high school. And I'm like personally really interested in how maybe the queer landscape has changed over the past few years, and especially in regards to Black community, and yeah, and whether that how that's either supported folks or hindered. Yeah, I'd be curious.
Sure thing. Yeah. Definitely has changed a lot. Definitely groups like Melanin Magic, like the Boston Lesbi Gay Foundation, um, the Queer Women of Color organization. There have been so many over the years that have kind of tried to, Boston is not that really the nightlife city, right? But even in terms of, as Lynn was saying, like reaching out beyond nightlife into being like a cultural hub, people have definitely done a lot of work in that regard. I would say that as sometimes it feels, I don't want to be all like back in my day, but sometimes when things feel sparse, I just have to remember like, oh, there used to be less, so I'm so grateful even to hear, like, I didn't even realize the expansion of your work, Lam. So that is amazing, to just hear and to know that that's going on in the city, and to have all of the, like, it used to be Machine and Club Cafe and Jocks, but like, it was kind of like, all right. So to have even these nights pop up in quote unquote mainstream environments, but on a consistent basis with full support and all those things, is dope. And especially as Lam was saying, like, the collaborations with the city, and of course having this office now, there's just a lot of opportunity that I feel hopeful about. I think Gio had their hand up too.
Oh, smooth, thanks. I put it in the chat as well. Earlier in your presentation, Daunasia, you had brought up a competency training, and I wanted to clarify, is that something that is intended for city employees only? Is it open to the public? And if it's not for the public yet, are there any plans for that?
Yes. So currently the competency training is only for city employees. But that being said, we've already had asks for outside organizations, for the Celtics, for NBC who want it. There are over 18,000 employees just at City Hall, not to mention the other 18,000 plus contractors, people who are vendors of the city, all of those folks. So we are, again, starting small and building. And so I actually love like the whole evolution concept, and everything that I've heard tonight is just resonating so deeply. But yeah, we're starting small. Like I said, we started with the most forward-facing departments and basically trying to roll it out from there. Part of the goal of that also is to build it into the culture of the city versus the mayor saying, everyone has to do this training. Because that could happen, that's likely something that, the administration would support, but it would have a different reception in that sense. So yes, we do want it to be public. No, it is not public yet, but those things are in the works. It's just really about rollout. And I imagine that it will become, kind of a bigger thing that's able to be offered from the city, whether that's on the website or in a, some type of held space. But yeah, that's a great question, and I wish we could offer it publicly, but it's coming. If any of you are wondering if we need you to send the information about the Amplified GSA Youth Summit to every young person that you know, the answer is definitely yes. So just feel free to leave that question in your mind. I'll answer it for you. It is boston.gov/amplify-GSA. But again, if anyone wants any more information specifically, I would be happy to send it. But yeah, we definitely, again, are really trying to reach youth all across the city. And so if people could share that information, it would be very much valued.
And also for BIPOC Pride, we're offering a special discount for all of the events, like not the non-free events, 20% discount to all Ujima members. So we really want you all to come through. And so this is our special way of giving you all our support, or asking for your support.
Thank you all so much. This was incredible. I learned a lot. I feel very grateful and my heart is warm. So thank you for filling this space up with your queer joy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This is awesome. Like I said, I learned so much about work that I thought I knew all about. So that's also to say we are always learning and growing. And I feel that so deeply in my spirit right now. Yeah, this is awesome. And again, I just hope people are able to plug into all of these things. And if it's not for you, that's cool, but please share it because there's just so much going on that we need to make sure people at least know that it exists.